When George Linnane became trapped in Britain's deepest cave system in November, it took 300 people 54 hours to rescue him.
He was very badly injured, but is now recovering and training to become a member of the cave rescue team himself. And he's here to tell us more about that extraordinary rescue in a moment. But first of all, Louisa James is going to remind us all of the details.
And George joins us now here in the studio with fellow caver Melissa Bell, who witnessed his fall and was trapped alongside him for 3 hours. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Well, what an enormous relief. And I imagine that during that 54 hours, there were moments when you thought you might not make it.
Certainly early on, yeah. Initially after the fall, for the first 3 hours or so, before the help started arriving, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. Once the help started arriving, I always felt like I had a chance, though. You
were in an enormous amount of pain, weren't you?
I was.
Because of the fall. And I know there were moments when you thought, if I just go to sleep, then the pain might be eased. But Mel, one of your roles, of course, was to say, don't do that, George, because you knew what that might mean.
Yes, yeah, I had the joy of trying to keep him awake and engaged for 3 hours.
Awake, engaged, and alive.
Really... Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Was keeping him awake vital?
Yeah, I think I felt that keeping him engaged, talking to me, you know, because otherwise I didn't know what was going to happen to him. I couldn't see him. I wasn't down there with him, so all I could go on was what he was talking to me about, what he was saying.
I think it was a particularly good call because of my jaw injuries. I didn't want to, you know, sort of choke on blood or, you know, anything horrible like that. So, yeah, keeping me with it enough to know what was sort of happening and was probably quite vital, yeah.
A lot of people, when they see what happens with cavers, think, why on earth would you do it in the first place? I mean, it gives me a sort of panic attack just thinking about... I mean, seriously, I get a feeling of claustrophobia just thinking about it. I can't imagine what it is like that you'd want to actually do it and face that risk. What is the attraction?
It's one of those difficult questions that as cavers we all get asked, and I'm not sure that we ever truly learn how to answer it. There's an element of, if you have to ask the question, you probably won't understand it.
Yes.
But also...
Is there a thrill about being in that sort of
there is.
environment?
It's by no means an adrenaline sport. Anyone who treats it as one probably isn't going to last very long.
Right.
It's more... When people think of caving that don't cave, they tend to think of sort of claustrophobia, the small stuff, the miserable stuff, the difficult stuff. But, you know, we do that, but you do it for a reason, and you do it to get to the good stuff, which is the pretty things that you wouldn't see on the surface, and the massive, amazing passages. And, you know, it's another planet down there at the end of the day. It's the same reason people scuba dive, or the same reason people would want to go to the moon. I don't know. You know.
But you were trapped for over 48 hours, multiple injuries. You must have thought that potentially you weren't going to come out at all. And I just wonder, is this the kind of thing that you ever get over? I mean, if you've actually experienced something which is a near-death experience, I mean, do you wake up in the middle of the night remembering it? Is it something that you can put behind you, or is it always going to be with you?
I imagine it'll always be with me in some way. I did have one night in hospital where I didn't get a wink of sleep because I kept on sort of remembering it in my head, and essentially I thought I had PTSD at that point. But it only lasted one night and then it went away. And I think what's been... Well, I'm not silly enough to think it's gone away, but it's not currently happening. And I think one of the reasons it's not happening at the moment is because I've talked about it a lot, and I've kind of been through it. That's helped my brain to process it. So yeah, it's not currently sort of weighing on my mind, and I'm not bottling stuff up. But you know, will stuff come up later when I go back to caving? Possibly. I'll deal with that when it comes. You know.
And you are going back, and you're going to join the rescue team. Well, I mean, that's a brilliant example of kind of giving back to those people who helped you.
It just feels like the right thing to do. I mean, having been through it myself, I'd like to be able to help the next poor soul that it happened to, because whilst caving is a very, very safe sport, you know, clearly this sort of thing can happen very occasionally, and when it does, it would be nice for me to be able to give something back. And having been on the receiving end of it, maybe I've got something to offer that not many people have.
I expect you'll always want to have Melissa with you, but I mean, Melissa, if he gives you a call and says, do you fancy a spot of caving in Wales in March, are you going to say yes, or are you going to have second thoughts?
No, I mean, caving with George again, definitely. Whether it'll be in March,
Really?
Probably not.
How has it affected you? Because, you know, George was the person injured. Mm-hmm. You were the person who had to keep him alive, frankly, and try and get him out. I mean, in that moment, what were you thinking about possible rescue?
I mean, it was horrifying to watch. And it was, I mean, I was focused in those 3 hours just on George and keeping him engaged, and that was all I was thinking about.
Did you have training which kicked in? Did you know what to do?
Well, I was limited in my options as to what I could do because I was stuck behind George and the hole that had opened in the floor, so I couldn't really do a lot at that point. But I've had first aid training, and I knew that talking to him, keeping him engaged was going to be important.
Yeah. And then you had the hours afterwards of, you know, just hoping that he'd get out alive. George, I know you've sort of dismissed people's fears of claustrophobia, but reading the details of your rescue, there is a moment where you are being taken out of the cave through the system, and your face is so close to the roof of the cave that a tooth comes out of your mouth. I mean...
That did happen.
That in itself, I mean, the rescue itself wasn't just a relief, it would have been quite alarming.
Yeah, there were bits of it that were more difficult than others. The first 16 or 18 hours of it, I personally don't remember. You know, probably due to sort of hypothermia and shock and all sorts of things that are beyond my pay grade to understand. But when I did wake up, I was down near the underground river that runs through the cave, and I then remember quite a lot of it. And yeah, there were challenges, there were hurdles. The bit that you've talked about was a tough bit. It was actually a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, because I've done the trip before, but obviously not on a stretcher. So actually, when you get to that part of the trip as a caver, you're pretty much on easy street, and that's what I thought. But it turns out that on a stretcher, not so much.
I suggested to George earlier, maybe, you know, you should switch to cycling, badminton.
Yeah.
But he's going caving again.
Yeah. Well, and he's going to join the rescue team, and I think that's remarkable. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you.